Objection. Question number 2, Peseta Lotu-Iiga.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Finance.
Order. We've dealt with that question. I've called Peseta Lotu-Iiga.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Finance. What steps is the government taking to tilt the economy towards exports and savings and away from borrowing and consumption?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, the government's taking several important steps. First, we've introduced significant tax reforms that reward work, savings and investment and discourage borrowing, consumption and property speculation. Secondly, we're getting the government's own books in order so that the government which is the least productive part of the economy, reduces its call on resources from the rest of the economy. And this will help in the long run to keep interest rates lower than they otherwise would be. Thirdly, we're reviewing extensively the regulation that applies to the export sector. And fourthly, we're pursuing free trade agreements that will deliver significant benefits to New Zealand, having recently signed agreements with Malaysia, Hong Kong and ASEAN, and in talks with India, the Gulf states, the Trans-Pacific Partnership countries, Korea and Russia.
Peseta Lotu-Iiga.
Supplementary, Mr Speaker. What progress is being made in tilting the economy towards exports and savings?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, there are some welcome signs of progress, although there are some headwinds. For example, households are being careful with their money. They are not spending up significantly. They're reducing debt. There are signs that the housing market is at the least moving sideways, and people aren't rushing back into property speculation. On the other hand, the exchange rate, the high exchange rate against the US dollar is offsetting some of the benefits of the very high commodity prices. I note that the Reserve Bank Governor said yesterday that households and businesses are keeping spending low as they reduce debt. And when you combine this with improved export and commodity prices, this is reducing New Zealand's current account deficit and external indebtedness, chronic problems that built up over the last 10 years under the previous government.
Peseta Lotu-Iiga.
What challenges does New Zealand face as the economy rebalances towards exports and savings?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, I think there are a couple of challenges. One is obviously the high exchange rate against the US dollar, although I might say that the exchange rate against the Australian dollar, which is our biggest trading partner, is at the lowest in 15 years, and this is considerably assisting our manufacturing exporters. I think the other big challenge is simply to get government in order. Government represents too big a call on the resources of the economy. It is effectively wasting government as a tax on the export sector. And because such a poor job was done of managing government in the last decade, we have a big challenge to sort it out.
Peseta Lotu-Iiga.
And what are some of the costs and risks of currency intervention?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, there's been some speculation about currency intervention. This government is continuing the policy of the last government, and that is it supports the Reserve Bank having authority to intervene. And the Reserve Bank has publicly set out the criteria which it thinks should apply before it intervenes. However, we share the Reserve Bank Governor's view that there is little evidence that currency intervention works other than in the short term. For instance, large-scale intervention by the Bank of Japan and the Swiss National Bank in the last few months have had only a transitory effect. Most governments and central banks share our caution about the considerable risks to taxpayers from extensive currency speculation.
The Honourable David Parker.
Has the Minister seen criticism of his rebalancing of the economy by borrowing for tax cuts and increasing government debt? And why does he deny that he's doing that, given Fran O'Sullivan's critique which asks, is there any point borrowing more to fund tax cuts if taxpayers simply use the extra debt to retire personal debt?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, no, I've seen almost no criticism of the government's plan to rebalance the economy, and that's because almost all New Zealanders understand the need for it. They're doing exactly the same things themselves. We're being careful with their spending, they're being careful with their spending. They are paying off debt, we're trying to constrain the rise in debt. They're focusing on being able to earn more, and that is exactly what New Zealand as a nation needs to do.
The Honourable David Parker.
Why does the Minister not promote the fact that his rebalancing of the economy through income tax gives 42% of those to the top 10% of earners, in reality meaning that low and middle income earners pay a higher proportion of total taxes in New Zealand, as while high income earners pay a lower proportion of total taxation?
The Honourable Billings.
Well, I'm not promoting that because it's not correct. In fact, the government cut tax rates across the board and produced extensive analysis after the budget to show that the tax cuts were fair in the sense that all income groups got about the same change in their net after-tax income. And no one has disagreed with the fundamental push of the tax changes, which are to discourage consumption and excessive debt and housing speculation and encourage exports, savings and investment.
Question number 3, the Honourable Darren Hughes.